I
Don't
think it
move
helped me. Sorry.
Go ahead, Eleanor.
Okay. I think taking each word in each of the promises or questions, it helped me to think more deeply. What is being said? And of course, it's many years ago since I was baptized, when I was 6 weeks old, and then even confirmation at 12 or 13. I mean, you don't really have a total understanding of the meaning and the depth of what it's all about. And I think it's been like a funnel, a narrow point going wider is growing more deeply into the spiritual world.
That's great. Has there been one promise more than another that's caught you kind of unawares?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just thinking more deeply about what each of the words means. Because, when you're in the baptism and, where people are reading through the words and everything goes fairly, I might say, quickly, you don't have time to ponder and think, okay, what does justice mean? What does this mean? And that, like, you have to have it all packed down in the top notch here before you get there. It's almost like I'm almost at the point of thinking, okay, Sunday's going to be a baptismal service. I want to sit down with the passage, go through the service and think, and remind myself, because baptisms are usually only about 2 to 4 times a year. So
I think I was preparing the intercessors list, and I think Chris has one possibly scheduled at the end of May. And there will be one at the Easter Vigil, of course, if you come to that.
There'll be one on the 27th of February, actually.
Oh, is there? Oh.
Yes, because it was postponed. Lamar's little granddaughter.
Oh, right.
Well, we'll all be alert then.
Yeah. Well, my thought was because I was thinking, I think you brought this up, maybe Linda, that people get their kids baptized that don't belong to the church, really. And so they bring their bridesmaids and all that sort of stuff to be the godparents. And the promises, they say, I will, with God's help. And that it's not going to happen. But then I got thinking, well, that's the purpose of the congregation being there, because they're also have some responsibility as well. So that got me thinking about a little bit about how it can be a shallow thing for some people, but it can be a deeper thing for those who believe and who are there to support the newborn or the child or the adult, whoever is getting baptized. So that made me think a lot more about things.
Well, I think that's wonderful. If you kind of take a look through the art of Jesus's baptism, there are times when he's in water up to his ankles and then up to his knees and up to mid-chest. And it's a good opportunity for all of us to kind of think, how deep are we in?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was in Boston, there were times like after a class like this when people would reaffirm their vows.
Yeah.
That was an option in the prayer book to say, I've come through a period of time and I'm ready to take these for myself again. So
Well, and I think too, I know at least at our church, and I'm sure at many others, if not all, they do have the parents and the parents, I think, of the people that are the babies that are getting baptized they have classes. I think there's 4 classes, at least there used to be. Because I remember my daughter being appalled because she doesn't go to church, but we got the first one baptized and then she had to go to classes for the second one 2 years later. She thought it would be a free pass because she'd done it once. But she and her husband went to all 8 of them over 2 years. So I don't know if any of it will stick with her, but the banners are hanging in the kids' bedroom. So that means something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about how the class has been a refreshment for you?
I think the idea that when we have a baptism, that it's part of the service that we all renew our own baptismal vows. And I never really thought about it until I was doing this workshop and sort of looking at what those vows are. And I know that my son is he's got very strong opinions on babies being baptized because he doesn't think they should be forced into something they don't necessarily want. But I think if and when he does get baptized, it will be a really thoughtful moment. I was thinking my brother, it was the same way. When he was a kid, as soon as he was able to say, I'm not going to Sunday school anymore, he didn't. But he made the conscious decision to get confirmed and in that way renew these vows. And I think this has made me look more closely at what those vows were, because I've always just taken them for granted. I always, I was a firstborn girl, so I did as I was told. And this has made me think about it more. So.
Take us into a deep dive in this last questions.
Yeah, let's do that, shall we?
Yeah.
So the vows we're going to be talking about tonight are the fifth vow from both Canadian and American churches, and that is, will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being? And the response is,
I will.
With God's help.
and then in Canada, a sixth vow is added. And I know many of you pay attention to this, but for others of us, oops, where did it go? Oh, here it is. Will you strive to safeguard the integrity of God's creation and respect, sustain, and renew the life of the earth? I will, with God's help. So there are a lot, as some of you have already talked about, the words are very pointed in each one of these vows. And there are lots of things we can talk about. Last week, we talked about a little bit about how the vow is not will you safeguard, but will you strive to safeguard. So strive, the concept of striving is important. The next word that comes to my mind is strive for justice. Justice is an important word. And not only that, but and peace. And not only that, but among all people. And then respect the dignity of every human being. And then I think the Canadian church is wise to add the sixth vow, because it's not only people that we're talking about, it's the earth and every creature, every part of God's creation. So yeah, safeguard the integrity of God's creation and to respect, sustain, and renew the life of the earth. So a lot of very important vows are made here. What do y'all think? What strikes you out of all of that? There's way more than we can talk about tonight, really, but what do you think?
I'm just curious as to when the sixth vow was added.
It was added in 2013 at the General Synod and had been thought about. It was a grassroots movement, really, the church to deal with not just climate change, but the fact that we had focused pretty much, as we usually do, on human beings and not on all aspects of creation.
Has there been any conversation about that being added in the Episcopal Church in the United States?
I'm not aware of that. I know that the prayer book is always under revision, always being thought about. And so, one of the things that is important to me, and probably to all of us, maybe not, I don't know, but that these vows actually call us to do something. I mean, we promise to do some things. And one of the things that we could promise to do is, if we're going to do this, if we believe these vows, then it means that we need to take them seriously. And also, words are very important, and so that's why I think that the Canadian sixth vow is so important, because, you could argue that, the American church, vows really are broad enough to cover that, but it's not top of mind. I mean, if you're not actually saying we vow to, protect and, sustain, creation and the planet, well, then we're not talking about that. I mean, it may not come to your mind.
That's true.
So,
yeah, there are movements within the Episcopal Church, the Lutheran Church. I know the Congregational Church, certainly the Church of England, to develop a creation care cycle in the liturgical year, as well as a lot of these resources are available online. So a couple of times within this month, I've been asked to do what's called a green liturgy. And it's been interesting to me to rework. We have a quiet garden morning on Saturday with a reflective time and a garden Eucharist. And it was good for me to try to work through Jesus as a child of the earth, and that the bread and wine are products of seed and soil and sun and water, to begin to expand the way in which we approach the Eucharist. So I can't say that I'm done thinking about this, or that the piece I'm going to offer on Saturday is a finished product, but but there are plenty of prompts out there.
I think it is also in Canada gone along with discussion around ethical investment. Should the church pension plan be involved with investment in, for instance, in fossil fuels or in tobacco or any of those things? And of course, it's not without considerable controversy whenever you open something like that, but it is an example. I guess you would think, as Joe was talking about justice and so on, it is an example of putting your money where your mouth is. And if you promise to care for the earth, are there certain industries that you ought not to invest in, and certain ones that perhaps you should?
And just as what Joe was talking about just a couple minutes ago, what does that look like for the planet? What does peace really mean from our understanding as a biblical people? What is shalom? What is hesed?
I think there can be a lot of debates between what's best for the earth and what's best for the people of the earth. I remember when they had the big discussion about plastic straws, and I had a discussion with Kira Lynn, who used to be the parish administrator for the other church that shares our church. And she was saying that if you get rid of plastic straws, all the people who have disabilities that don't allow them to drink from a cup or don't have the money to get bamboo things or, you know, these fancy things from Terra 20 are at a disadvantage. And I hadn't really thought about it because, you know, I just immediately jumped on the, you know, we have to save the sea turtles bandwagon. And that she presented this other look at things. And it's the same with the pandemic. I mean, everybody's worried now about the trash of the masks and the rubber gloves and things that have to be used to fight the pandemic and the effect that they're having on the earth. So it seems like every time you come up with some way to solve an issue, it leads to a different issue. So it's very difficult sometimes to figure out what is the best thing.
Isn't the important thing that we actually talk about it and talk it through and try to come to a resolution?
Sorry, could you say that again?
I have a problem with sound on this. I was saying, isn't the important thing that we have a discussion that tries to come to a resolution? Because that too is a way of working towards peace. And you can't have peace without respect. I mean, I find it awfully hard to respect my next door neighbors here. I do try, but it's very difficult.
Why is that?
They're pretty dreadful. Dreadful.
Well, getting back to the vow that we have here about creation, I think it's so appropriate because most people, not all, but many are small babies or children. And it's a perfect time to look at what we're leaving them in terms of God's creation.
Yeah.
And so it's a good time to pray that people will strive or work towards preserving that, especially in light of climate change. You know, we all know that the realities of it.
I think that also when people look at Genesis, they tend to think that, I mean, I speak to so many people because I am an organic farmer and they say, well, this is given to us, but they think given to us to rule, not to nurture, not to care for, but we're the dominant ones. And so if at a very early age, we can begin to realize that nurture and care is what we are here to do, not to rule, not to be in charge, not to take what we want and mess up the rest, that our responsibilities mean that we have to live together with plants, with animals, with rocks, with water, with seas, with ice, with snow.
Also
with
thinking,
respect.
Dorian, that it relates so much to our same behavior in terms of one group dominating another.
Exactly.
So
That's why I'm saying respect is so important. If you're going to get to peace of any kind, you have to be able to respect that which you are dealing with. And it's so much easier when it's animals and seas and trees than people.
Yeah.
Right.
challenge of
And
unlearning
it's an every
racism.
day that I say to myself, you know, how do I deal with this?
And Dorian, you were talking about the, you know, the control of, or the being the owner of,
Yeah.
the quiet garden morning that we're having this Saturday. In preparation for it, I was talking to the man who's going to be the presenter, who is a landscape architect, and he says he's studied this fairly carefully and truly believes that in some versions, and he named especially the King James Version, he thinks that the word that has been translated sometimes as dominion, that, you know, dominion was given, he thinks that the better translation is stewardship.
Yes,
Yeah.
it should be.
Mhm.
It really should be.
Yes. There is something in Genesis where God asks Adam to tend the garden.
Yes,
So tending is a very different word also.
yes.
Hmm.
But I think so many people tend to forget that, the other
Mhm.
part of tend.
One of the concepts that that is not strictly Christian by any means, but is very valuable from an American perspective, and I suspect that there are resonances in Canada as well, is the native, you know, some Native American tribes at least have the notion that, well, you know, when we make a decision about use of the earth, we need to look at what it's going to be like 7 generations hence.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that provides a whole different perspective
Yes.
on things. We do not do that very well in America, or most of the rest of the world. So
I remember seeing this very strong little short movie. It had Julia Roberts narrating as Mother Earth, I guess. And basically it was the earth saying, I don't need you. You need me, but I'm going to continue to change and evolve and grow and keep moving. The main reason we have to take care of the earth is really for us. I mean, the earth will continue long after, I mean, the earth was around long before we got here and will continue for long after we are no longer here. But we need to tend to the earth more for ourselves and for the other living beings that are on the earth than for the earth itself. And even, you know, maybe just for other people, because plants and animals, they are much better at adapting to changing circumstances than we are.
Except if you look around and see what species we're losing, it is a horrendous amount, and it's our fault. So yes, they adapt, but is that the type of adaptation we want, disappearing?
indeed. Can you talk a little bit about other possible meanings, or what does it look like for justice in this vow? Will you strive for justice among all people? What does that look like? I think all the discussion about you know, care for the earth, care for our interconnected, you know, our interconnectedness with human species, the earth, every, you know, trees, everything. Those are important, but are there other ways that justice plays out or should look like?
It's like a responsibility to other people and being, and not just about, it should be like a relationship between people and a responsibility to people you have that relationship.
Absolutely.
And justice in neighborhoods, not just economic justice, but yeah, environmental justice for people living in concrete all the time. But I think from my perspective, justice is that each person gets what they are due. That's kind of God's sense of Justice.
But isn't it used as a social term? As a social term. So that's kind of confusing, don't you think?
Yeah.
I think one aspect of justice is recognizing people's right to equity. I'm not talking about equality, I really mean equity.
Let's say something about how you understand the difference, Dorianne.
Well, equity means having a rightful share in. I can't always make certain that equality will operate, but if there is an open door to equity, equality might follow, or it has more of an opportunity. But if I can recognize other people's right to equity in the way they live, in the way they share in decision-making, in the way their views are taken account of, we're going some way towards that.
Yeah, thank you. Carolyn, you're muted, but you have your hand up.
Unmute.
I feel a little frustrated as a citizen, hampered in our quest for justice or even looking after the earth by things that are superimposed by local or state government. And sometimes I feel that the only thing I can do is just take care of my own little pod, or pad, and that I really don't have any other way to control things. And that's a bit frustrating. Except if you're, as a member of a church, you can help out there. But as an individual, I feel very frustrated right now that there's not a lot that any one person can do other than take care of their own little group of friends and try to stand in the other fellow's shoes and be fair. But I don't know if the rest of you feel that frustration, but I do.
Some of it has to do also with electing the representatives that will fulfill your values. If you're living in a jurisdiction in which the elected officials are pursuing policies that you feel are hampering your search for justice, then that the ballot box is one remedy for that. But that's a few years away so often.
Right.
Yeah.
I think too, it's related to baptism in a way, Carolyn, because baptism is about more than the individual. It's about a community and what it takes. And it does take community to shape and form us if we're reflective about that. I think that joining an organization that's making grassroots change might make you feel less, might give you a little more hope if you can come alongside someone who's been doing that kind of work. The water keepers, I keep thinking about the water keepers for some reason. Certainly they've done some work in Ottawa, but St. John's has a water keeper, right? Somebody who oversees the quality of that river or the rivers here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct. One thing is that there was an article in the headline for the newspaper in Jacksonville this morning was that the eye care community, and I don't know if y'all have eye care in Ottawa, but it's a group of, it's a faith-based organization. It identifies one or two issues every year in an assembly. And then tries their best to hold governmental officials accountable. So, and the headline this morning was that one of the big issues for eye care this year in Jacksonville was to work with the sheriff's office to increase the use of adult citations rather than arresting people for minor offenses, like some traffic charges or some, small drug charges or things like that. And they've done a lot of work, and they've made a number of efforts to contact the sheriff to hold him to account. And the sheriff basically has refused to answer any of their phone calls. And now, and you'd think, well, this is very frustrating. I can think that the eye care people would say, well, dadgum, I mean, we've worked hard and he won't even talk to us. Well, now it's in the newspaper. And that, even though the newspaper is not super respected in Jacksonville, it is still the newspaper, and it is the source, and the TV stations may well pick this up as well. And so eventually, and it's a shame that it's eventually, but eventually this will bubble up to the people that it needs to affect, and there may be some change that will occur. And I think that's all very consistent with, people of faith, living out their baptismal covenant, or however they see, Jesus, or God calling them to, to be active in the world.
The cathedral is not
Linda and
at
Joe,
present.
the rooms are ready whenever you are.
Okay. I just wanted to say that the cathedral is not at present a member of iCare. And so one action might be lobbying for that to happen so that the cathedral can be part of the religious communities in the city who are working toward a different way of doing things. So,
Joe, is it an international organization?
Apparently it's in the United States, but I know that there are many branches of it other than in Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
But it's called ICARE, and I'm sure you could look it up, Google
Yes.
it, and we'll see. We'll see if we can get some information about it. And
Thank you.
so, should we honor Michael's wonderful timekeeping and other technical abilities and go to our breakout groups? Would that be okay?
My timekeeping is lousy. You people just never take a breath so I can interrupt you.
You've got control of the mute button, don't forget.
True.
You have to put your hand up, Michael.
take your turn along with everybody else. Yeah.
All right. Okay, your invitation is coming.
You're just going to have to ask Pamela for that story.
Well, anyway, we had been invited to sit in that pew by the elderly man who was sitting at the edge of it. And he leaned forward and he said to her, "Yes, I've seen that woman. She doesn't need that much room."
He was striving for justice and peace and respecting your dignity. However, your seatmate was not.
When I turned around to share the peace, the woman sitting behind me was named Pamela Cooper. So we just had a little love-in, and then she told us about another church that we felt very comfortable in, and that's where we went from then on. Anyway,
I had somebody tell me that. I went to a service at St. Bartholomew's in Ottawa because it was the anniversary of Florence Nightingale, and being a nurse, they were having a homily on Florence Nightingale by a scholar that followed Florence. And I went in and I sat down, and somebody told me I couldn't sit there. It was their pew. So
well, they were not living up to their baptismal
I moved. It
covenant,
wasn't my
sounds like
church.
to
I
me.
moved.
yeah, I had that happen in Jamaica. 3 times I sat down and people told me I had to get up and sit somewhere else. And finally I sat somewhere where nobody was offended by me. And I was so startled because that was the first time I'd ever been told, get up and get out. Because I thought we were supposed to be welcoming at church. But I was there with Ann Derbyshire, Dorian, and
with Ann. Oh, okay.
oh, I loved her. And I explained to her what happened, and she said, well, you did want to go there. And
Where were you? At Kingston Parish Church?
yes.
At St. Andrew Parish Church? I go to St. Andrew Parish Church, and it's very funny because it was a merchant's church. And believe me, it's still a merchant's church. So there's a sense of ownership in some of the pews. I sit here.
Well, that was what was happening to me. When I was in Mandeville with Anne, because I was with Anne, I was allowed to sit anywhere that Anne said I could.
Right. Okay.
Well, hopefully
I
none
don't
of
know
us
that
will-
they're as bad, but it's really funny, the ownership that people have of where they sit. I guess
Well-
God put a marker down for them.
Yes. Yeah, they kept it with their poker chip they got the night before. Who knows?
I don't know. That's the church I go to when I go. And actually, I'm so glad I can go online because I go there and I don't feel nourished.
Mm.
And it's nice. I mean, I'm greeted by the verger, I'm greeted by the secretary, but I don't feel like I really belong.
Well, you ought to be able to belong at a place where we're talking about the baptismal covenant. So Linda, any parting comments or for our
There was some really wisdom. There's always wisdom in the group about kind of inviting the Spirit to move us beyond whatever limitations we are confronting, whether it has to do with aging or whatever, but to, kind of keep seeking others, and maybe even in new ways to partner for some of this work within families or just in other ways. And I'm grateful because, Helen talked about her son and how things do change. I mean, he came to them through the foster care system. And so how is it that we respect the dignity of young people, older people? So I thought it was quite rich.
Mm.
What about you guys?
Does anybody in our group want to say what we talked about?
Well, we talked about renewing our baptismal vows in a more formal way other than during the baptism of somebody else in church. And Joe mentioned that there was you could have a class, did you say at your church to renew your vows?
Mm-hmm.
If people wanted to. And
you can do that in the presence of the bishop. If the bishop comes, that's a good opportunity to ask if you could renew your baptismal vows, because that's one of the jobs of the bishop, is to hear people's renewal on behalf of the church. And in addition to baptism, they can also confirm or have people renew their baptismal vows. So that would be entirely appropriate to ask for that.
Like as a group, Patricia? As a group or as an individual?
You could, as an individual, say, when the bishop is coming, I'd like to renew my vows.
Because I think Peter and Edith and I were tasked by Joe to ask our priest about the possibility of doing that.
Well,
it's very powerful. It's very powerful to watch that. Especially, and I, not just as a priest, but as a member of a congregation, you really want to know what the story is. And it's a beautiful opportunity to ask, tell me your story. What's the story? Why now? Why is this important for you to reclaim this baptism? And it's really much more profound than having the priest walk up and down the aisle sprinkling you with water which I used to do all the time. Say, remember your baptism, and then have somebody splash me the same. To watch people reclaim a public faith is very powerful in the Episcopal Church. There aren't too many altar calls.
So I hope that you will send us a picture or let us know when you're going to do that, so we can either join you online or
You
whatever.
can join us on Zoom.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes, please.
The prayers are right there at the end of the baptism service. If you have your BAS, you can look at the end. There's prayers for confirmation, reception. That would be from another denomination, or reaffirmation. So it's all there.
Okay.
It's on page 161, Elizabeth.
I don't have mine right here.
No, I'm just telling you so you'll know.
No, but thank you. Thank you for that. I didn't, I haven't looked at that for maybe ever,
No.
to be honest.
And speaking of joining people on Zoom, I do want to let all of our participants know that this same link is used every Wednesday evening at St. John's. And so this is the last of our baptismal covenant classes. Next week, Father Aaron Weedy, who does claim Canadian cousins, but they're way west of you out in Vancouver. But he will be doing a single class on the Holy. It's a study that he's done over a number of years. And so he has a presentation to make on the Holy, which we thought we would enjoy before the Lenten season begins. The following Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. So instead of 6:15 on our YouTube channel at 7 o'clock, we will be live streaming the service from the cathedral. I know that it's probably hard if you're home on a computer to impose ashes on yourself, but if you do wish to hear the readings and take part in the service that way, and also the cathedral choir will be singing during that 7 p.m. service, so you're welcome, of course, to join then. And then the following week, we go back to our regular 6:15 on this link, on this Zoom link. And we are going to be, each Wednesday, we're going to be doing a reading and reflection on one of the readings from the upcoming Sunday in Lent for the first 30 or 40 minutes. And then we're going to close each Wednesday in Lent with the Office of Compline. And so all of you are welcome to join us for any of the offerings that we have at St. John's. And it is the same link will be used. You'll notice the next time you log in, we'll change the name. It won't say Baptismal Covenant. It will say whatever is going on that week, but it is the same link, and you're welcome to join us anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I often join your Compline, Michael.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
From the other side of the border.
Let me ask, when you do that, which pew do you sit in? Because I may have to move you.
I'm not telling you.
Well, it is delightful to be with you all. And I am very grateful for everyone who's here, everyone who's been here in this class, for everything that y'all have contributed and said. So I should leave it to Linda to tell us to go in peace, but I grew up Baptist, so I think I can say that too. So whatever.
Not before all of you here, that you have helped Joe and me to reclaim our baptism, and because we've been in this good company with you, this good and faithful company of those who are the friends of God. So I can't tell you how happy I have been to see your faces again, and to because I miss you all, and how glad I've been to meet new people too, coming such a way, and Susan so far away, and Gail with us for just a time, and Nan for my first time with you. So you've all enlarged our faith, and we're grateful for that. So go in peace with God's help to live and remember your baptisms. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda and Joe and Michael, very much
Yes.
Thank you.
for including us and for your leadership.
Mhm.
And it's been a wonderful lead in to reflections for Lent.
Yes. Thank
And
you all
to
for
think
your
in a different
sharing.
way. And Pamela, if you get here again, we'll go to church together and sit
Oh,
where we
sweet
want.
woman. I would be delighted to do that. I miss my Ann Derbyshire something fierce.
Nice
Take
to meet
care,
you
everyone.
all.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
God bless.